It doesn't say it. Interesting. It doesn't say it when I do it here. Hi. Sorry, guys. This is a couple of minutes early. I'm just trying to like mess around with the video again. Welcome to Rock and Roll Book Club, where it's a club of one person, which is basically makes it a book report, and the structure doesn't matter, and it's all stuff I like to read, and I'm just going to ramble for 15 minutes about my favorite books. My favorite rock and roll books, anyway. Sorry, is this not coming back? Oh, lordy. Hang on a second here. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please bear with me. I still haven't figured out a way to get the iPad coming up at the same time as the screen here on the computer, so I'm dealing with like a million different things. Anyway, you don't need to know about that. Welcome to Rock and Roll Book Club for today, Tuesday, the 15th of February. My name is Dawn Sev. I am a singer, songwriter, linguist, general smartass based here in Ottawa, Canada. And I am a big fan of reading, and I'm a big fan of rock and roll. So the idea of the Rock and Roll Book Club is that it's a combination of the two. So for today's Rock and Roll Book Club, we're going to be talking a little bit about Liz Phair's horror stories. This was one of those books that I picked up and I did not put down for like a whole afternoon. It is engaging. It is very truthful, and it's a very good reflection of what a lot of women artists had to endure in the 1990s and beyond. So let me just do one more quick flip here of... Is this thing not going live? Good Lord. Anyway, this must be going live. Anyway, so let's do a quick review of what it was like to be a woman in the 1990s, especially a woman in music. Not that I was in music in the 1990s, but, you know, I remember that epic pretty well. So let me tell you what I remember about it. I remember coming out of the 80s thinking, really, all we're going to be doing is like, you know, bellowing or being arm candy to guys with big hair. The 1990s comes, and I'm in London for 1991 and 1992, and over there, it wasn't that there weren't gender discrepancies between male artists and female artists, but the gender difference between the two of them was a lot smaller than what you could find in North America and what you even still find today. So in 1993, I moved back to Canada. I moved down to Toronto, which is supposed to be the epicenter of the arts and the epicenter of music and everything. And one of the first things I'm finding is that, number one, there's a very specific type of girl who's getting involved in music, and she doesn't tend to be short, stubby, and mouthy. And it's kind of a weird thing to go to gigs in Toronto in 1993 because you never really know what the atmosphere is going to be like. And in about late 1993, early 94, 95, interesting things start happening. You start seeing more women stand up and say, hey, you know what, this is what I believe and this is what I think. I'm writing songs that are based on women's experiences, and this is what I went through. So you had songwriters like Fiona Apple and Alanis Morissette and Sarah McLachlan who were writing songs that came out of, you know, from a very confessional standpoint, which is kind of good and kind of bad at the same time, I guess. I mean, bad if you're not into that kind of songwriting, but let's be clear here. It wasn't as if that was an exclusively female way of writing songs. John Lennon had been doing it for a long time, both as a Beatle and as a solo artist. And a lot of women really got it in the neck for writing songs of that caliber. But the one person who caught some of the flack, but didn't seem to get it as badly as others, was Liz Phair. And I think it was because Liz Phair, again, this is just my 2 cents, total ballpark. You know, if you have any, you know, objections or any disagreements, please chime in. One of the things about Liz Phair was that she wasn't afraid to be not mean, but calling things as she saw it. Like, she was very direct. She didn't try to make things overly poetic. She just went straight to the point with songs like Fucking Run. And the fact that she did that whole album of Exile in Guyville, which I will not pull out of the record cabinet because I don't want to drop it on the floor again. It was very direct. It was just kind of like, listen, you bastards, this is what it is. And it was hugely refreshing because it was a real replica of what I had heard with bands like Curve and Jay-Z Chainsaw and like other bands in the UK who were just like, bam, this is it. So, cut to 2021, Liz Phair releases Horror Stories, which encompasses all of her time as she's, starting out writing, as she's growing up in suburban Chicago, as she is getting married and having kids and getting divorced, and all sorts of things are happening to her. And the great thing about this is that even though it is bibliographical, it's not really a standard bibliography. First of all, because the stories are told in very episodic ways, like snippets of a lifetime. Like the opening snippet, the opening piece to this is of her in a bathroom with her girlfriends. And there's this girl who's crazy drunk and not in very good shape. And it grabs you immediately because you're like, oh my God, especially if you're female and you go to clubs. It's like, you've probably been in a similar situation to that. The only other book I've got so far that's really compared to that, it has that kind of opening that grabs you, is the Viv Albertine book, which we're going to see in May. And I love the episodic nature of this book because I wasn't getting a story. I was getting like a quilt, like a combination of ideas. Like you were spending the weekend with somebody hugely interesting and hugely entertaining who was telling stories about her past, but not necessarily having to do it in a linear manner, but doing it in such rich detail and providing the sense, like such a clear sense of what that was, that you feel like you're with her as she's on those sand dunes outside of Lake Michigan, or as she's on a plane, or as she's in the Whole Foods in Los Angeles. You get that sense of it. And here's the other thing that I love about this book. As much as Exile in Guyville was not sparing about male-female relationships or about relationships in general, she doesn't spare herself. And this is the interesting thing about this biography, is that it tries really hard not to be a hagiography. She doesn't make herself out to be some kind of saint because she embraces that humanness, and she's very clear about the fact that she messes up and she makes mistakes. And that's hugely refreshing. And I think that's also one of the things that got lost in that whole 1990 smackdown of women artists, when women artists were starting to be criticized and made fun of. I mean, just think about it. This is like 2022 right now, right? Jagged Little Pill came out in, 1995? And people are still going on about this shit with Alanis and the actual definition of what something that's ironic means. That album is 27 years old. Guys, drop it. The whole ironic thing, done. Okay? But the fact that that argument and that people are still trying to tee off on Alanis for that stuff, it gives you an idea of the kind of residual misogyny, really, that fueled a lot of the criticism against women rock and rollers, which is something we're going to see in Lisa Robinson's book on March 1st. No one ever asked me about the girls, which is very, insightful in this whole thing about how women have made huge, and had a huge impact in rock and roll, and yet we're still expected to fit into this very straight and narrow definition, like almost like those ice cube trays that you get from IKEA that are like, do they make the sticks? It's like, if you don't fit into that, it's like, come on guys, rock and roll's been around for 70 years. It's like, let's move on past that. Anyway, one of the other things that I really enjoyed, I'm sorry, obviously I have to work on my connecting language because I'm not particularly engaging otherwise. I wanted more. A lot of books, it's like when you read the book, you get the sense of a completeness of the person's trajectory. But that other neat thing about the episodic nature of how she talks about this book is that you're kind of like, oh, I want to know more. I want to hear more stories. I want to know what's going on. Not because of the horror, but because of the humanity of what she's talking about. So I'm really hoping that she comes up with a follow-up book for this. And again, I'm looking at the iPad to see if anybody's adding comments, and I don't believe they are. No, nobody's adding comments, so I'm just going to keep talking for another 5 minutes or so. So that's the other great thing about it, is that it doesn't automatically guarantee you that there will be a sequel to the book, but it leaves you hungry and wanting more at the end of the book, because again, it's like being in the cottage with somebody who's got a guest who's like so superbly entertaining that you think, oh, I want to have a dinner party. I want to invite this person out for drinks. I want to hear more about this person, what this person is going through. And I thought that the timing of the release of the book was really interesting because, of course, Liz Phair put out her latest album, Soberish, not, within the same season. I don't have the exact dates. Within the same time frame as she released the book. So it's also really encouraging to see that women of my generation who are now in our early 50s, we are not putting down our guitars. We're not stopping writing. We're not being put on the shelf. And I think it speaks a lot to Liz Phair's contribution as a songwriter and as an artist generally, that she's managed to have this, not like some people do and some people don't, this long, rich trajectory of songwriting, of producing, yet still being a human being and making sure that the humanity of her stories and her ideas, which are not always nice because that's why it's called horror stories, really shines through in this book. So, Liz, on the off chance that you were paying attention to my Twitter feed and you see this like rambling, idiotic little video, I would love to know if you're going to do a sequel to horror stories, because this is I can't be the only one alone who would really like to hear more of these kinds of stories. Anyway, so that's horror stories. Just a note about the setup of the book club. I've noticed that a lot of people are not necessarily tuning into this as it's broadcast, but people are watching it after. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this up, and I'm going to start doing one of two different things. I'm either going to have the regular first and third Tuesday of every month where I do the Rock and Roll Book Club, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to change it to the Rock and Roll Book Report. So it's kind of like being in school, where you have to read your book and you have to make notes on it and you have to talk about the overarching themes and you have to talk what you like, what you didn't like, and that sort of stuff. And I'll do that for 10 minutes and then talk about other different things that are going on, because hopefully with the way things are looking to reopen in Ontario at the beginning of March, there will be more gigs. Do I even dare say it? There might be more gigs to report about. There might be more opportunities. So that'll be the first part, is just doing a quick informal chat every first and third Tuesday of the month, kind of like what Rock and Roll Book Club was, but I promise to make it more organized. And then also having one-off conversations, kind of like I had with Darren Michael Boyd a couple of weeks ago about rock and roll books. Most of the books that I've been focusing on are books about women or books by women, or books by women about women in rock and roll. But there are lots of other great authors out there too. Grant Lawrence, who was a musician, is now with the CBC. He's written a bunch of books. Jim Hercombe, who was for a very long time a key fixture at Shea 106 Radio here in Ottawa, who has written 2 books about rockin' on the Rideau and the history of rock and roll in Ottawa, which I know if you're watching this from outside of Ottawa, you might think that's a little bit of a joke. But we have a very rich musical history in this city, and it isn't just Alanis and it isn't just Paul Anka. There's a lot that went on here that doesn't always get heard about outside of the bounds of the city. So that's what I'd like to do, is I'd like to focus a lot on that stuff. So I'll be doing the regular first and third Tuesdays, as I have been doing, but also doing one-off talks, which I will put on the Facebook page and also upload to the YouTube video channel. And yeah, so if you know somebody, or even if you are somebody who's written a rock and roll book and wants to talk about it, hit me up. I am totally up for this. So that's Rock and Roll Book Club / book report for tonight. I just want to give a quick shout out before I wrap everything up. I want to give a good big shout out to my friend in Hamilton, Johnny Palmatier, who runs the Fake Band Buttons page on Etsy. And if you're looking for a cute gift for your favorite rock and roller, this is a really good idea. Johnny's shtick with this, I'm sorry, John, I don't mean to make it sound like that. The idea behind this is that everyone loves band buttons. Band buttons have been around forever. I mean, my mother used to have, God, I wish we still had it, buttons from when she saw Elvis in 1956 in Montreal. 56 or 55, I don't remember which. Might have been earlier than that. So Johnny took that concept and he's basically invented bands such as the Redneck Zombies, Handful of Idiots. This is actually one of my favorites. Somebody should actually make a band. So, the Offsides, ska meets hockey. And my personal 2 favorites, which I have on my guitar strap, the only pink thing I ever wear besides Teenage Head t-shirt, which is probably no surprise for those of you who know me. Dee Dee, count us in. 1, 2, 3, 4. and the punk rock girls. Sorry, I'm gonna learn how to use this camera at some point in time. So these buttons cost about $3.25 to $3.75 each. Shipping is very reasonable. It's like a couple bucks. And they just make a really fun gift for your favorite rock and roll lover, just whether somebody who just, just wants some kind of decoration, or you got a secret Santa or a secret birthday gift or something like that. Hit him up. Fake band buttons on Etsy. He did not pay me to say this, and he's probably going to be really embarrassed when he sees this on the video, if he watches the video. But this is like one of the best ideas for gifts for a rock and roll lover that I've seen. Anyway, 7:15, I'm not going to keep you. I got to still work on the bed tracks for the new recording of St. Rita. Guys, single coming out soon. We're working on the first single, so this is going to be super exciting. So, thanks again for putting up with me. Read on, rock on, and we'll catch you, hang on a sec here, catch you on Tuesday, March 1st with Nobody Asked Me About the Girls by Lisa Robinson. This is, again, Lisa Robinson, the music editor of Vanity Fair magazine. Very, very perceptive view into what makes women musical artists tick and why a lot of people aren't interested in that. And March 15th, I'm Not With the Band by Sylvia Patterson. Story about what it's like to be rock and roll when you're not actually rock and roll yourself and what that feels like. Again, I'd like to encourage you all to support your local independent bookstore. Again, let's not buy books from big multi-billion-dollar billionaires who put themselves up to space and then do us the disfavor of coming back. Take care, read on, rock on, and we'll see you here in 2 weeks. Okay? Miss you lots. Rock on more. Ciao for now.